Hi, and welcome to No Niche Zone, the podcast about everything. I'm your host, Priscilla Davies, and for those of you who are joining us via video, I'm sure you're noticing something a little different. Yeah, we're in a new location this week, trying something a little different. So don't trip out. Your eyes are not bugging out. It's true. It's me, and we're here. Let me give y'all a little pro tip. Okay. If y'all want to get into business, make sure that you know how to do business. Okay. Because when you don't know how to do business, then people have to search elsewhere for other businesses who know how to do business if you're picking up what I'm putting down. Yeah. So just, understand the importance of having a little business acumen. And if you don't have it, that's okay. Hire somebody who does. Because there's too many people out there, too much competition for you to be effing around. So yes, that's a coded message for the fact that I had to leave my last studio because they were effing around, okay? So, we're starting fresh here. Y'all know, as usual, I have a bazillion things to talk about because that's what we do here. I mean, that's the purpose of a podcast. Yeah. I'm gonna jump into some stuff, but there's been so many updates. It's like so many things have happened like last minute, and I just want to touch on a few of them. I don't want to spend too much time, but I'm a yapper, so we'll see what happens. First and foremost, I don't know if you guys have heard, but P. Diddy, another sexual assault suit has come against P. Diddy. Another person has sued him for sexual assault, and this time it's a man. It's a producer who worked with him over the years, and y'all, the allegations, I mean, I can't even say they're staggering because they've been staggering from the previous allegations, but they're even staggering more, okay? Staggering, okay? Write that in a dictionary. Just made that up. So not only is this man accusing Diddy of trafficking, sexual assault, we've heard that before, but also he's bringing other people into the mix. Meek Mill, Chris Brown, Justin Combs, P. Diddy's eldest son. I think that's the eldest, yeah. His eldest son. Carisha from the City Girls, her cousin. He accused her of sexual assault. I mean, it is messy. And, we're going to continue keeping an eye on it and keeping an eye on things as they unfold. But P. Diddy, I mean, his days are numbered. And what's wild, the question, they also implicated Usher. Of course, this is all alleged, but they also implicated Usher in this. It's just interesting to see how many people are going to get taken down with Diddy. Like how many more closet doors are going to get open and how many more skeletons are going to come out throughout all of Hollywood. Then, of course, a little update on Donald Trump. The corrupt Attorney General, Letitia James. Oh, man. We talked last week about how he received a $450 million judgment, including interest, in his New York fraud case. And he had 30 days to file an appeal, but he had to put the money down. So Donald Trump has officially filed his appeal, and now the clock has started, and that 30 days has started ticking, and he has to come up with that $450 million for that. He tried to get them to accept a $100 million bond. He was like, just give them $100 million. They'll be happy with that. And tried to ask for that to be enough for the appeal and ask for a delay. And of course, he was denied. Heavy, quick, and fast. So he is required to come up with that $450 million, y'all. So we're going to be keeping up an eye on that. And I believe there's something else. Hopefully it'll come to me, another update. Hopefully it'll come to me, but if it doesn't, maybe next week. Okay? Let's get into the actual show. First, I want to talk about a concept that I think will save women thousands of hours in their lives. It's a concept that I learned the hard way, and I want to teach you the easy way. Because when I learned this, I'm telling y'all, ladies, I took back thousands of hours thousands of hours of my life, thousands of hours of peace of mind, of no stress when I understood this simple concept. And I think every woman on the planet needs to understand this concept so that we can have a little bit of peace of mind. Okay? Now, I actually brought this up in one of my earlier episodes when I talked about the Swedish word killgissa. Killgissa. Yes, Swedish women have invented a word to describe this phenomenon that I want to talk about. Killgissa, by the way, is spelled Kilgissa. Yeah. I guess in Sweden, G's are sound like wives, okay? G's are wives in Sweden. Write that down. So, killgissa roughly translates to boy guessing. Quote, boy guessing or guy guessing. Now, here's the thing. I don't know listen, when I talked about this on my TikTok, all the Swedes came in the comments and they were like, it means boy, it means guy, it means boy, it means guy. I don't speak Swedish. I just learned this one word. So I don't know. Okay. And if different Swedes are telling me different things, now I'm even more confused. But you take it as you will. It either means boy guessing or guy guessing, roughly translated. And here's the definition, quote, to claim something in a way that makes it sound like you know what you're talking about, even though you're really only guessing. Did you pick that up? It's similar to bullshitting, but this is specific to men, boys, guys, depending on the translation. I'm not really quite sure. So it's also similar to mansplaining, but it's like an adjacent cousin of mansplain, okay? And we're gonna get into it, but I also want to side note, these Swedish women also have a similar word for women, and it's tjejveta. And that's actually spelled Tjeveta. Tjejveta. I know it's pronounced that way because people told me in my comments. And this translates roughly to, quote, girl knowing. Although it's not as widely used, but tjejveta has been described as, quote, when you talk about something you're actually completely sure of, like you're uncertain or guessing, so that you don't appear to be self-righteous. Or when someone dumbs themselves down to be more likable. Ouch. Ouch. Now, obviously, this is a phenomenon that can happen to anybody, but specifically girl knowing, this applies to women. And ladies, how many times in your life have you been 1000% sure? And you were like, maybe, you get the high pitch, the non-threatening high pitch, high tone, your telephone voice, and you know 1,000% the answer, but you dumb yourself down. Dim your light. Pretend like you don't know because, again, you don't want to be seen as unlikable. Oof, this one hit me in the gut. Because I used to do that. You know what? I was about to say I'd be doing that, but you know what? This is one of my life practices is not doing that, is working on not doing that, on owning my brilliance, owning my space, not dimming my light, and being okay with being unlikable. That's a major, when I tell y'all, when you can be okay with not being liked, you've already won. You won. You're free. You're liberated. But that's a discussion for another day. So let's get back to killgissa, guy guessing or boy guessing. So essentially, have you ever asked maybe your boyfriend or your husband or your brother a question and they give you an answer and it's like boom, 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 boom. And you're like, oh, okay, sweet, sounds good. And then however later you're like, oh, this motherfucker was completely incorrect and had no idea what they were talking about, but they sounded like they knew. They were so confident in how they spoke. Well, I came across this TikTok of a man who was describing this same phenomenon. He was talking about it in terms of the Black community, but this also applies to honestly everybody. And I'm going to play that right now. And I want you to take a listen.
The biggest issue in the Black community is a Black male ego. We think we know and we don't. Because as little boys, we've been traumatized by our dads who didn't know any better. We were punished for not knowing. We weren't punished for not learning. Perfect example. Most Black men in here, you know, there's a male figure in the family. Hey boy, go bring me that 3/8 socket wrench. What the fuck is a 3/8 socket wrench? So you're a 6-year-old. So you walk over, you grab a ratchet and walk back. Boy, don't you know what a 3/8 socket wrench is? No. Now you feel like shit. So that instilled in you to act like you know even when you didn't. That's why there's so much conflict in our households. There's so much conflict in our communities. That's why your ego's so jacked up, because you don't want to humble yourself down to learn something.
He was preaching. But I love that he gave words to this phenomenon. And I mean, I feel like we've all seen this, we've all witnessed it, and we've even experienced it, even as women, like this, you know, being expected to know things as children, that it's like, like he said, a 3/8 socket wrench, what the hell is that? But this especially applies to boys and men. You know, they're trained to act like they know, even when they don't know. From like traumatizing situations like that, where your dad or your grandfather is like belittling you because you didn't know something that it's like, dog, how, I am 8. I'm 8. And then what happens is it's because it really is a skill set in some ways that you have to practice. That skill set, or really I'd say maybe that coping mechanism carries with you throughout your adulthood. And then you find yourself in situations where you're being asked questions and people are relying on you, and you're just like, blah, 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 blah. Act like you know, even when you don't. So I posted this on my TikTok, and then somebody stitched my TikTok and went even further into it. And I was like, damn, this is good stuff. So you know I'm about to share it with you too. Teach men to pretend like they know what they're talking about, even when they don't. Let me pause. That's me, by the way. That's the part of the stitch that he stitched.
Holy cow, this is so absolutely true. And I don't care if any man says that they weren't trained in this. We were trained in this. Okay, but they called it speaking with authority, right? And men are taught to speak with authority, directly taught by men, taught by the church, and by example, simply by watching confident men. And remember that before the internet, confident men speaking with authority couldn't be challenged immediately with facts that contradict their opinion. If a man spoke with enough authority, all of those in his environment were forced to accept this reality or be threatened with violence. And men are taught to speak with authority so much that we don't even question our own authority sometimes. And if someone is confident enough, you don't disrespect or question the authority of someone else.
Dangerous. Before they got cut off. Speaking with authority. I've heard that term before. Speaking with authority. Act like you know, even if you don't know. Kilisa. Guy guessing. Boy guessing. And this has real world freaking implications. Like I told you, ladies, I had to find this out the hard way in my life. Okay? Oh Lord, I was on a house improv team over at a theater called Second City. It doesn't exist anymore in Hollywood. It used to. It still exists in Chicago, but it doesn't exist here anymore since the pandemic. But I was on a house team there, and I think it was like 50-50 men and women. And me and like the dudes on that team, like, things that I would think would be like the simplest, easiest conversations would be like the biggest challenges. And I would be so confused. I'd be like, what's going on here? Why do I have to fight so hard to get a simple thing, like make a simple thing happen? I would be working so hard. And, you know, I realized it was like one day I had this like just awakening, this epiphany. I was like, oh my God. These motherfuckers don't know what they're talking about. They just talking. They're just talking and they don't know what they're talking about. And I'm arguing back and forth with these people when I know what I'm talking about. And me and the women on that team, we will be like, you know, in the car on the corner of goddamn Santa Monica and who knows where till like 4 a.m. talking and like, why can't we get the simplest things done? Why is everything an argument and a discussion and a back and forth and a back and forth? And ladies, y'all know what I'm talking about when you're in those staff meetings, y'all. A staff meeting that should take 30 minutes takes 45, an hour, 2 hours because all that back and forth, because you're explaining simple concepts and you're like arguing with people and you don't realize that the reason why you're arguing is because they don't know what they're talking about. And meanwhile, here we are, Shevetta, girl knowing, minimizing our knowledge and our wisdom and our experience when we're getting these guys who are, you know, overestimating their, or, you know, overcompensating. That's not the word. Overcorrecting. I'll come up with it, but that's not the word. But you know what I'm trying to say. And when I understood this, y'all, it's like, it was like a moment where it was like, do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. Like all the pieces came together. I started like remembering things from when I was like all those staff meetings, fighting with my brother, fighting with my dad, my boyfriend, like all these moments started like, and suddenly the picture made sense. They didn't know what they was talking about. And so ever since I got that wide awakening, that's how I've been approaching dealing with most men and especially in professional settings. I'm the boss. I take the reins. And I never would do that before. I'd be doing that Shevetta shit. You know what I'm saying? Acting like, oh, well, let's all be fair and everybody. No. I actually know what I'm talking about. And guess what, y'all? I have saved thousands of hours of going back and forth. And I don't do that. I just like, yeah, no, that's not what we're doing. We're going to do this. And that's it. And on a side note, and this doesn't just apply to men, this actually applies to everybody, but especially men, like people love getting orders. Just as that's a pro tip for people who have a natural like leadership inclination inside of them. Most people don't want to think. Most people don't. I don't. I want you to tell me what to do. I hate the fact that I have this leadership skill that I can see what needs to be done. I want people to tell me what the hell to do. And most people do. Because it's just like, why not? You know, if you have expertise, of course I'm going to listen to you. So, yeah. Ladies, I want you to walk away with this. Add Kill Yisa to your vocabulary. Next time you arguing with your man, ask them, baby, is you Kill Yisa-ing me right now? Are you guy guessing? Are your boy guessing? Keep it real. And one of the things that I really loved about this, when I did post about it on my TikTok, it blew up. And a lot of Swedes got into the comments and a lot of Swedish dudes got into the comments. And they were like, yeah, we use it ourselves. Like they have a good nature about this word too. It's not like, you know, a mean, like jabby thing. They will call themselves out and be like, oh, I'm just Kill Yisa-ing. Even, I'm sure that's not the way you say it in Swedish, but I haven't taken a Swedish class yet. So let's move on, shall we? Let's get into some politicking with Priscilla, election edition. I know y'all are sick of me singing these transitions. I promise you, I'm actually working on having somebody make me little sound bites. And when I say working on, I mean like I've started thinking about the process. I've done some hard thinking on it, okay? So, as I mentioned in the beginning of the year, 2024 is an election year, and I definitely want to focus on some election-related stuff because I want you as my listeners to be hip to the hippity hop, to be ready to go in November in 2024 and be an informed voter, knowing what you're going in that booth to vote for, okay? This week, I want to talk about gerrymandering. Have you heard that word before? I'm sure you have. I feel like all of us have heard that word before, but the question is, how many of us know what that word means? And more importantly, how gerrymandering affects our daily lives, our real daily lives. So I want to talk about it because I had to do a little research on it a few years ago. So I was like, I know what I've heard this word. I know it's bad. I know it screws people, but I don't really. So I did a little research on it and I want to share that research with you. So let's get into it. First and foremost, gerrymandering this is the definition. When election districts are drawn to unfairly favor a political party. You can usually tell when a district is gerrymandered because when you look at the map, the boundaries don't make no goddamn sense. They're not natural boundaries. It's not like mountains or rivers. It's not freeways. It's not railroads and rail tracks. It's like boundaries looking all kind of crazy ways. So you can usually tell that that's probably a forced gerrymandered district. Okay? It doesn't look natural. Before we get into how it's affecting us, the real world implications of it, let's get into the history of gerrymandering. So gerrymandering comes to us from Eldridge Gerry. Yeah, I pronounced it Gerry. Eldridge Gerry. Eldridge Gerry was a signer of the Declaration of Independence. He was a framer of the Constitution, and he was the 5th Vice President of America. Y'all ever think about all the vice presidents who have been lost to history? Like, have you ever heard of this guy? I ain't never heard of him, but he was the 5th vice president. I feel bad for them motherfuckers. Like, can you imagine how hard he worked to become vice president and flash forward and nobody knows who the hell he is? I don't know. He was the governor of Massachusetts in 1810, and during his governorship, he was tasked with redistricting. Prior to this, the districts had been based on county lines, right? Things that make sense. But when Eldridge took over, he decided to go ham. This mother sucker, he made the wildest district, okay? And that district was so wild looking that people noticed that it resembled a lizard. Yeah. And eventually lizard became salamander and salamander became Gerry's mander, which eventually became a gerrymander, AKA Eldridge Gerry's salamander looking district. Okay. So that's where we get the name gerrymander from, which eventually as time went on started becoming pronounced gerrymander. That's the history behind it. Every 10 years, redistricting occurs after we have the census. That's why the census is so important, because that's part of what they base the new districts on every 10 years when they redistrict. Whatever party is in power, they're in control of redistricting. I'm going to say that again. Whatever party is in power is in control of redistricting. And so this is where we get gerrymandering from, because we have allowed politicians to be in charge of making their own districts. So instead of the voters choosing politicians, the politicians are choosing their voters. More than half of the states today still do this. 29 out of 50 states still allow the party in power to create their districts every 10 years. I mean, isn't that absurd? That don't make no kind of sense. Of course we got gerrymandering. It's like telling a bunch of kids to go into a candy store with, $1,000 gift card. Do they still do gift certificates? Can you get a hard copy? Remember those? Gift cards are dope though. I'm not gonna lie. Gift cards are legit. There was a random pro tip here. Back in the day, I don't know if you can still do this. I've tried it, but it hasn't worked since then. But back in the day, if you had an empty gift card, like a Visa or I think a MasterCard also, you could use that to pay some of the meters, the parking meters in LA. If you live in Los Angeles, yeah. I did not pay a parking meter at a job that I worked at for a whole freaking year because I had an empty gift card, and somehow the meter would read it as a full gift card. I've tried it since and it hasn't worked, but give it a shot. If you live in LA or wherever you live, give it a shot. Get an empty gift card and give it a shot and report back to us. So imagine that's like a kid going into a candy shop with unlimited funds and you telling them, but you have to be responsible. Of course they're gonna stuff their mouths. Of course they're gonna rot their teeth. Of course they're gonna get sick. Because why wouldn't they? You've given them free reign, and that's what gerrymandering is. And gerrymandering has real world implications, y'all. In North Carolina in 2018, Democrats won 50% of the popular vote in the House. So 50%, right? One person, one vote would mean they got 50% of the seats. But they only got 23% of the seats in the House, despite winning 50% of the popular vote. That's wild. And the same thing happened in 2016 and 2014. Wisconsin is widely known as the most gerrymandered state in the whole entire country. In 2018, in Wisconsin, despite winning every single statewide race and 53% of the votes cast for the state assembly, Democrats were only able to garner 36% of assembly seats. The math ain't mathin'. In 2022, Wisconsin voters elected a Democratic governor, a Democratic attorney general, a Democratic secretary of state in the state level elections, which are not affected by gerrymandering because they use the total statewide vote instead of separating it by districts. But on a district level, by comparison, the state's infamous gerrymandering enabled Republicans to retain a 64 to 35 advantage in the state assembly and a 22 to 11 majority in the state Senate. The math ain't mathin', y'all. These are real world implications. And obviously, whoever is running the government are the people who are making your policies. So if the government doesn't reflect the people, then the policies are not going to reflect the needs and the desires of the people, which is why gerrymandering is such a freaking problem. And of course, take a wild guess, y'all. Who do you think gets affected the most by gerrymandering? That's right, you guessed it. By POC people. Of course. Marginalized people, Black, Indigenous, POC people. We are the most affected by disenfranchisement. And it's not just by POC people, also people in urban centers, urban populations really get fucked as well. And that's how popular policies, things like legalizing cannabis and upping the minimum wage, like we're still stuck on this $15 minimum wage. It's 2024. You can't do anything with $15. But those types of policies get passed because we have people in power who don't represent the people that they're supposed to be representing. And that happens because of things like gerrymandering. What's the alternative? I'm sure you're wondering, well, what is the alternative when it comes to gerrymandering? Oh, actually, before that, I want to mention, yes, Democrats do also gerrymander, but this is overwhelmingly a Republican issue. Okay. I looked it up. I want to say, I think it was like the top 10 or 12 gerrymandered states in the US. Only one of them was a Democratic state. Only one. So this is disproportionately a Republican issue. According to the New York Times, quote, Democrats have been fighting on a slanted terrain with redistricting ever since Republicans ran the table during the 2010 midterm elections and drew themselves favorable gerrymandered maps in 2011 and 2012. Though courts invalidated them in states like Pennsylvania and North Carolina, many still remain, end quote. Bernard Groffman, a professor of politics at the University of California, Irvine, said, quote, the lingering effects of partisan gerrymandering disproportionately by Republican-controlled legislatures make it hard for the Democrats to hold onto control or win control because they have to win probably closer to 52% of the national vote. So since 2010, Democrats have had to work harder to get what Republicans have been able to get. They have to get 52% of the popular vote just to even the playing field. Not 50, 52. So what is the alternative to gerrymandering? Like, what else can we do besides letting politicians pick their own districts? Well, we can use independent or bipartisan commissions to create districts, aka either independent, nonpartisan, non-affiliated commissions put together or evenly bipartisan commissions put together, both from the left and the right, evenly, to agree upon districts. And there are many states that are already implementing this. Washington, Montana, Idaho, Arizona, Colorado, Alaska, Michigan, and California are among the states that have implemented either using independent or bipartisan commissions. So we already have like alternatives. There's not a reason why we have to continue gerrymandering other than the fact that it benefits certain politicians and they don't want to get rid of it. We have alternatives. We're just not implementing them. So there was a bill that was put on the floor back in 2021 in order to overhaul the election process, in part focusing on gerrymandering. And that bill was called H.R. 1, the For the People Act, okay? This came out when Democrats controlled everything. They controlled the House, they controlled the Senate, and they controlled the White House. So obviously they passed this of course they didn't. Of course they didn't pass this. Why would Democrats ever pass a bill that would actually help the people when they actually have power? When would they ever? Why? Senators Sinema and Joe Manchin, they were the people who blocked the two people who blocked the passage of the H.R. 1 Act. So what happened is they downsized it and they created the Freedom to Vote Act, which catered to the issues that these people had, and they still couldn't pass it. But on Tuesday, July 18th of 2023, so fairly recently, Democratic members of Congress reintroduced the Freedom to Vote Act, which is a comprehensive voting rights bill that would establish national voting standards. So it'll be the same all over. Every state couldn't just be doing whatever the hell they wanted. And it would end partisan gerrymandering, tackle felony disenfranchisement, okay, suppressing the vote. And it would require the disclosure of top donors and create protections for nonpartisan election officials. It would create disclosure for the money in politics. Yeah. Because that's another thing we need to know. Who's paying for these things to happen? And, it's still, nothing's happened since then, but be aware of this, y'all. This is what things like calling your representative, emailing, texting your representative, being like, yo, what's up with the Freedom to Vote Act? What happened to that? What happened to H.R. 1, the For the People Act? Like, let's get it cracking. Okay? So that's gerrymandering, guys. Now you know. Now you are familiar with gerrymandering, you know what it is, you know the history of it, and you know most importantly how it affects you. And you know that there are alternatives out there to gerrymandering, and we, the people, just need to make it happen. Shall we switch gears? Yes, we shall. Okay, I came across this article in The Guardian, and it was called, quote, "The audience just looks at what your genitals are." I'm going to take that back because I wasn't ready. Quote, "The audience just looks at what your genitals are like. Why Joanna Lumley thinks we should axe sex scenes." Ooh, what a title. That's one thing I love about The Guardian. Their titles are like 17 miles long. Okay. I don't even know if The Guardian is like propaganda. I don't know. I read everything, to be quite honest, but I do appreciate their articles. They write an essay in the article. I mean, in the title. Now, this article resonated with me because recently I've been noticing that I've been like fast forwarding through sex scenes. And I've been fast forwarding through like kissing scenes too. And it's interesting because, growing up as a kid watching TV, I never batted an eye. I mean, not even as a kid, as an adult too. Like, I never batted an eye. I would watch these sex scenes pop up and I would just be like, meh, it's sex scene, nudity, kissing. Yeah, the like super close up where you can see literally the saliva going back and forth. I would just, watch them and move on to the next scene. But I noticed recently I just can't do it. I'm just like, I don't know. It's like, I just don't need to. Like, if this was real life, right, and a couple was making out in front of you, you would look really creepy if you were just sitting there staring at them. It would be weird. So, I don't know. I've just found myself having a hard time watching them. And reading this, I was like, yeah, girl, I feel you. By the way, Joanna Lumley The Guardian is a British paper. She's a well-known British actress. And she talked about how, she's been around for a long time. And she talked about how back in her day, her and Vanessa Redgrave and people like that, she's like, we all had to take our tops off. Like, it was just like expected. Like, that's just what it was back in the day. Like, we had to provide titillation, And I think that's the core of like why I've been grappling with it, because it's like, is this necessary? Do I really need to watch somebody make out for a whole uncomfortable 27 seconds? Do I need to see people fucking on screen and naked? And do we need it? And she's not the only one that feels this way. According to the article, quote, "In October, a survey of 1,500 adolescents," Gen Z, I don't know why they said adolescents. It was people from 10 to 24. So Gen Z, 1,500 Gen Zers by the UCLA Center for Scholars and Storytellers seem to hint at a waning appetite for watching sex on screen. A near majority of respondents said that sex was not needed in film and television to move the plot along, while even more wanted to see a greater focus on platonic friendships. End quote. I thought that was really interesting, that they were more interested in seeing deeper platonic friendships than love on the screen. And I clicked on that link and it opened up an article titled, quote, "Almost half of Gen Z viewers want less sex on screen, study finds. Annual UCLA report finds viewers between the ages of 10 and 24 also want more shows and films about platonic connections," end quote. That's the title if you want to look that up as well. So I think it's interesting that younger generations aren't down, that I myself have been having this reaction towards seeing sex on the screen and kissing on the screen. And I gotta say, if I'm gonna make a mini prediction here, I think the days of like gratuitous sex are over on the screen. The days of gratuitous sex on the screen, on the silver screen, are coming to an end. Mostly because a lot of times, like, it's just really not necessary. It really isn't. And it really is just there for the purpose of titillation. Especially, now that we see all this coming out about these Hollywood producers, Harvey Weinstein, the dude who ran Nickelodeon, I don't know. I forgot his Dan, whatever. I forgot his name. And his foot fetish. Look it up if you don't know what I'm talking about. There's a reason why at one point the Nickelodeon logo was a foot. There's a reason why they were always doing weird foot things on Nickelodeon with the kids. Okay? Look it up. So now, like, that all this stuff is starting to come out, and we know that a lot of these execs were creepers and are creepers. It's just like, again, putting the pieces together. And it's like, do we really need this? Do we really need this on the screen? Or is this just some creepy ass executive doing creepy ass shit, and we as the audience are unwittingly being drawn into their creepy ass like fetish? I remember I saw this indie movie back in the day, and I forgot the name, and I will never, maybe one day I'll remember it, but I cannot remember it. I mean, this is a while ago. And it was a movie that was all about sex. It was all about sex. The whole premise was sex. And they didn't show sex once. There was not one sex scene. And it really opened my eyes. And I was like, wow. And it didn't take away from the plot, nothing. Like the movie was good. It was a really good movie. I wish I could remember the name of it, because I tell you guys to look it up. Not one sex scene. The whole entire movie was about sex. So that let me know that sex scenes really are not necessary. Even if it is central to the plot, you still don't really need it. It makes me think of like Game of Thrones. Remember when Game of Thrones first came out? That first season was like a rape every 15 minutes. Remember that? And women had to be like, excuse me, Game of Thrones executives, can we stop using rape as a plot device for character development? For women? It's always for women. It's like, how do we get this female character to grow? Guys, get around. What are we gonna... Oh, rape. Let's have her raped. The gratuitous sex, and they calmed it down on Game of Thrones, But I think that was, obviously that was in part because people, especially women, were like, yo, like, we don't need this to tell a story. We really don't. I've talked about the cultural shift that I see happening across the country in many different areas, but especially in Hollywood, right? We see all of this, like, these skeletons coming out of the closets. We see all of this, stuff rising to the top. All of these dark secrets are coming out. We talked about Diddy today, right? Harvey Weinstein, right? All of this coming out, and, people are really reassessing, like, what was being put on TV and the way that we were treating actors on TV and in film, and like the scenes that were being written. And it's like, when you it's like when you really think about who was behind it. And I'm telling you this as a writer myself. I write things that are true to me or things that I'm interested in exploring. So yeah, a lot of these creepers were making these scenes and doing all this just because they wanted to titillate the audience. And there was no benefit. And let me be clear, I ain't no goddamn prude, okay? I ain't no prude. I'm okay with nudity, but there's levels to it. There's levels to it. And the gratuitous, unnecessary, not necessary for the plot, nudity and sexual scenes and all that stuff, it's just not necessary. But I do hope that eventually we get to a point in our society where we get comfortable with nudity so that we can like have normal, healthy, non-sexualized nudity in real life and also on the screen. All right, let's get into our last story. Y'all, several months ago, I posted on my TikTok about Lyft introducing a new feature called Lyft Women Plus Connect. It's a preference feature prioritizing matches between women and non-binary drivers and riders. All right. And it was first introduced as a pilot program only to several cities, but eventually it expanded to more cities. And ladies, it is now nationwide. Nationwide is on. I'm kidding. They don't sponsor us, so I can't sing that. It is now nationwide. The expanded rollout was in direct response to the strong demand seen since the launch back in September. Since then, millions of people, drivers and riders, have been using the feature, and it is now available in more than 240 markets across the nation. Women Plus Connect launched in September in 5 early access cities and then expanded to an additional 50 cities just over a month later. The response from riders and drivers has been incredible. Drivers using Women Plus Connect keep the feature on 99% of the time. Nearly 7 million Women Plus Connect rides have been completed to date, and 67% of eligible drivers have opted in to Women Plus Connect. Women Plus Connect is one of Lyft's highest rated driving features. And y'all, I am so here for this. I think this is a brilliant move on Lyft's part, especially considering like all of the liability they've had to take on with, women riders and drivers being assaulted, being harassed, and worse. I think this is great. I feel like Lyft was like, you know what? We're sick and tired of getting complaints about women being harassed by like creepy drivers or creepy passengers. I saw this one video of this woman. She was driving this dude and he was pissed, dog. He was in the backseat, like going off, and he didn't do anything to her. But I just was thinking like, my God, he's behind her. Like he can just, whatever he wants, just bang, And it's like, what's she gonna do? She's driving and it was terrifying. I've never driven for Lyft or Uber, so, I don't know. But I can imagine how terrifying it is, And so I think this is brilliant. I took my first Lyft Women Plus Connect ride yesterday. Yesterday, I did a little research for this podcast. No, I'm kidding. I actually had somewhere to be and I took it, and my driver was a lady. And, I asked her, I was like, hey, how has it been? And she's like, I just turned the feature on. Like, I didn't even realize it was a thing. And she's like, I'm loving it. Like, it's just so much more peaceful. And she's like, most of my clients have been women, and it's been incredible. And I loved it. I enjoyed my ride. It was fantastic. And I really feel like this is the wave. Uber better get on it. This is the wave. I set mine to Women Plus Connect, and I'm going to keep it to Women Plus Connect. Now, to be clear, you're not guaranteed to get a woman or non-binary driver. It depends on who is available. So, you will get, whatever is available, but the preference, you will more likely get a woman driver. And I gotta say, women Lyft drivers, now is your time. Stand up. If you've been thinking about driving for Lyft and you're like, I don't feel comfortable. I don't know. It's not the safety issue. Now is your time. Stand up. And I gotta say, I think that this can apply across a lot of industries. I was driving home on the freeway and I saw this purple minivan, but a Sprinter type of minivan. And it was super cute. And I was like, oh, what's that? It was a commercial minivan. I was like, I want to see what their business is. And it was a moving business. And I was like, oh, is that a women's moving business? Because it was this bright purple. And so as I'm driving, I start, fantasizing and daydreaming about whoa, an all-female moving service. Oh, wow, that caters to women? That would be amazing. Now, it turns out that it, in fact, was not. It was a regular moving company. So kudos to them for using bright colors. But yeah, it just got me thinking, I would 1000% use an all-female moving company. 1000%. First of all, I know that they're going to take care of my furniture. They're going to be delicate with it. They're not going to be banging it around. I know they're going to be more detail oriented. And I don't have to worry about my safety when they're moving furniture in and out of my house. I mean, listen, if you're a woman and you have some entrepreneurial spirit or you have some skill set that you're really good at, Now is the time. It's time for us to create a microeconomy. Ladies, create a business for women by women. You will be booked and busy. I promise you. Think on it, ladies. Think on it. I'm just saying. And with that, we have come to the end of another episode of No Niche Zone. Thank you so much for joining us. Of course, follow the podcast at No Niche Zone Pod across all platforms. Come find me on YouTube, same name, at No Niche Zone Pod. I'm gonna tell y'all every week. I'm having a great time on YouTube, so come find me and subscribe, y'all. I'm trying to monetize, baby. I'm trying to get to my 1,000 subscribers, y'all. Also, you can follow me at Pris the Goddess across all platforms. You can find the podcast on Discord at No Niche Zone Pod, and send your listener letters into no niche zone at gmail.com. That's it for us, and we'll see you next time.